Hi, welcome back to week 3 of spiritual formation of the congregation. You're going to need your assignment template for week 3 because you may want to take a few notes as I talk today, so you may want to go get that right now. I want to take just a moment to review the video 1 and 2 where I was talking about discipleship. We talked in week 1 about we are disciples of Jesus when we follow Jesus, when we are being changed by Jesus, and when we are living out the mission of Jesus. Notice those are all action words: following, changing, living out. And they're all present tense. They're not something from the long ago past. And then in week 2, we said, hey, it's not enough to just be a disciple. We also need to make disciples. So how do we do that practically, naturally? I suggested two ways for you to do that. The one is that throughout the day, be on the lookout for unscheduled, spirit-orchestrated opportunities to be a light for Jesus. Be a candlelight, a flashlight, a warning light, or a spotlight. And then whenever you go to a meeting, or some sort of gathering, whether you're the leader of it or a participant in it, be on the lookout for opportunities to share some TLC. T is talk truthfully. Don't make it appear like you have it all together or you know all the answers. That'll just intimidate other people. Instead, listen to others and learn from them. So L is listen and learn. That's the only way that you can convey Christ to them where they're at in their walk with God, so that you can focus them more specifically on God and His Word, not upon you. Today we're going to focus on an aspect of how God has created and wired each of us uniquely. And we need to tap into this aspect in spiritual formation. You know, we can't separate our spiritual lives or who we are from who we are spiritually. Physically, emotionally, relationally, intellectually, we are all one unit. And God designed us uniquely to love Him, worship Him, and serve Him. And how we love Him, worship Him, and serve Him will be different for other people than it is for us. That's why Psalm 139, verse 14, is so appropriate here. I praise you, God, because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. God created your brain with a communication system. Okay? And that communication system not only connects with various regions within your brain, but it also coordinates a message to go from your brain to other parts of your body. And that, let's call that communication system your neural pathways. Now you may say, why are we talking about this? I've never heard of this, but you do know about this already. You know when somebody has had a brain injury, that sometimes over time with lots of therapy, they're able to regain some of the function that they lost due to the injury. That's because the neural pathways up in their brain were slowly rebuilt and rerouted around the original injury site. You're also aware with dementia and Alzheimer's patients, there is no brain injury that has caused this, but rather the neural networks are breaking down. The electrical impulses, the information cannot get through. Either they're being clogged within the neural network or between sections of that network. The synapses no longer the impulses can no longer jump from one part to another. So a person first begins to lose their memory, their ability to think or recognize people, to think, to speak, to swallow, and on it goes. But I want us to focus upon these neuro pathways because of their importance to spiritual formation, specifically in the area of learning styles and sacred pathways. If nothing else today, I want you to remember this one thing. People learn differently, worship differently, and serve differently, and in a large part, it's due to their unique neural pathways. You see, all of us have the same 8 pathways for learning and processing and living out, applying what we've learned. But our pathways, those same 8 pathways, are different in each one of us. Let's think of different types of roads for a moment as an illustration. Say you've got a 3-hour trip to make in your car. Well, if I had a 3-hour trip to make in the car, I'd get on a highway. I'd get on the interstate because that's a wide, strong road, and there are multiple lanes. So if somebody's going slow, I can zip around them, and there aren't stoplights. I want to get where I'm going easily and quickly. That's a wide road. But what happens if I didn't have a highway available to me? All I had was a dirt road that had lots of ruts and holes in it. Well, it'd be a lot slower and harder. I'd have to be more careful. I'd have to concentrate more and work harder and be on edge and just be right there at the steering wheel to make my way. Or what if the only road I had available was a mucky sand road? Well, I'd have to go really slow, and it would be very tedious. This is what I'm talking about. These types of roads are like your 8 learning neural pathways. Although we all have the same 8, there may be 1 or 2 for you that are super highways. And boy, that's how you like to learn. That's the easiest and the most fun. And but if you don't have the opportunity to get on the highway and you're stuck getting on a dirt road or a sand road, it's frustrating, it's difficult, it's time consuming, it's hard, and you don't enjoy it. We're now going to look at the 8 neural pathways that are your learning styles or your learning roads for how you process information. What we're going to do is take a look at that picture. It's called Multiple Intelligences Circle. We're going to believe, if this was like a clock, we'd be looking at 3 o'clock, and we're going to go around the clock or around the circle. And I'm just going to say a few words about each of 8 learning styles that we all have. We can use all 8, but usually there's just 2, maybe 3 that we enjoy using or come easy to us. The rest take a lot of effort. Some people, the first one, are word smart learners. That means they learn best by listening to someone speak or teach. Again, this is words. Or they personally like to read things. Or they personally like writing papers or writing things. And they find ways to worship God while they're doing these 3 things. While they're listening, while they're reading, something really moving, or they're writing something. These are word smart learners, or the word pathway. Second type of learners are logic learners. These are people who, they want to see the big picture first, then they want to investigate and get way down into the minutia of stuff. They like connecting the dots on patterns or sequences and thinking abstractly. They want to see how everything fits together. These are the people who enjoy a good PowerPoint presentation or a note-taking guide. Logic worshipers, learners worship the God who created and sustains it all, both at the macro level and the micro level. Not surprisingly, teachers and preachers are usually word smart and logic smart. And the majority of students who get A's and B's in schools are people who are word smart and logic smart. The problem is that's only 2 of the 8 learning pathways, and that leaves out the other 6 types of learners. And that's where we in spiritual formation, as pastors, as teachers, as youth group leaders, and as children's leaders, need to be aware of this. Third type of learner is a nature learner, the nature smart learners. Boy, they're at their best when they're out of doors. And they discern things and connections that no one else even notices. They're like sentinels when you get them out of a classroom and get them outdoors, and they're seeing all sorts of things the rest of us are oblivious to. These people worship best outdoors. They love worshiping God at the beach, in the woods, watching a sunrise or a sunset. And if they have to be indoors, well, they'll have their daily devotional time sitting looking out a window or from their porch. Or they'll maybe have some natural objects that they touch or look at during their devotional time. Or they may play a nature soundtracks going in the background when they worship the Creator God. Then there are the people who are self-smart learners. These are people who prefer to reflect by themselves with no interruptions or other people milling around or talking. They need time to independently think through things on their own. When self-smart learners are in a small group Bible study, they probably won't say a whole lot. And other people will think they're not listening or they're bored. But it may be they're just waiting for things to get quiet when they get home, that they can kind of process what they've heard, and then they'll come to their own conclusions or resolution. Worship for these people is also more quiet and inward, filled with more prayer and intimacy with God. Fifth type of learning road or pathways are people who are picture smart. Boy, these are our visual learners, the people who love graphics, all forms of art, 3D objects, displays over talking heads. A picture is worth 1,000 words is their mantra. These people enjoy if a church has stained glass windows, if it displays religious art or symbols, if the pulpit or the communion table vestments get changed, their liturgical vestments or some other creative artsy things change. With the boom on technology these days, visual graphics are unlimited for their use. Video clips, object lessons, PowerPoints, even the decorating of the platform of a sanctuary with a current sermon series or a current formation emphasis in the church. All these things will help these people to learn and to assimilate what is being hoped for. Then there are your music smart learners. As you'd expect, these people are sensitive to sounds, melodies, cadences. They learn best using rhythms and rhyming, swaying, clapping, tapping, waving. This isn't just for kids, this is for adults. They connect with God through praise and worship music throughout the day. Boy, they're worshiping God. It's almost like an unending prayer if they've got their worship music playing. And these are the people that when they worship God, they worship best when they're singing worship lyrics, because the lyrics are their testimony to God, their tribute to God's attributes. Body smart learners. These are the learners who learn best when they can move and do things and experience things firsthand. They do not learn well having to sit still and listen to someone else talk. They need to be tapping out. If they're memorizing a scripture verse, they need to be able to tap it out or use hand motions. And these are the people who worship best. Well, it may be through dance, it may be through a service project where they, or a task group where they are serving others. Large motor skills are really important to them to be able to learn and to how they worship and serve God. And lastly, the eighth one is the people smart learners. These are the people who their learning pathway is very intuitive. They're high EQ. These learners have to be able to interact with others in their learning. They need to be able to talk things out and discuss things with others and hear what others are saying so they can think, oh, do I believe that or do I think something else? Team experiences, group discussions, projects are valuable to them. Their worship for God is at its zenith when it is a shared experience with others. The more, the better. This numbering of 1 through 8 is not of his importance. It was just to get around the circle, the multiple intelligences circle. But these 8 smarts or 8 intelligences we all have. It's just we are strong in a couple of them, and others are strong in the ones that we're not. In conclusion, I just want to give 4 tips for all of us to remember about learning styles because it's the application that's important here. First, on your handout, learning styles affect the formation of all individuals, whether we are learning, worshiping, or serving. Learning styles affect the formation of all individuals, whether we are learning, worshiping, or serving. It doesn't matter whether you're sharing one-on-one, mentoring somebody, or working with your kids at home. Doesn't matter whether you're in a small group, a task group setting, or congregation-wide service. Remember, others may not desire or cannot learn, worship, or serve like you do. Help others identify their pathways for learning, worshiping, and serving, and you will aid them in their spiritual formation. 2, if you're a leader, it's better to share less information, but use more learning style reinforcements. Share less information, but use more learning style reinforcements. By that, I mean it's better to share 1 point with 3 different learning styles than it is to share 4 or 5 points poorly by just saying the words. That's the word learning style. Try each time you're in a setting where you're teaching a group of people to use a minimum of 3 learning styles each time. Third, leaders and teachers should talk no more than half of the session time, and the rest of the time should be spent with small group discussion and letting others report back to the entire class. You see, I'm going to give you a key here. People will remember most what they say, not what you say. And so it's important for you, after you've said something, to break them into groups where they have to talk about how you've guided the conversation up front, so that they start using the words that you used and they start interacting with the viewpoints that you had, because they are going to remember what they said, not what you said. It's also good, especially when we think for all of us, but especially for people who are self-smart, the more reflective types, to whenever possible, have some silent moments in your teaching or at the end of your sermon so people can personally reflect and do business with God right there, right in the room before you dismiss them. And then fourth, the final tip, hearing others talk and share their ideas is how leaders discern their students' next step in faith formation. Again, hearing others talk and share their ideas is how leaders can discern their students' next step in faith formation. You know, it's only when a leader stops talking and lets others share their thoughts or ideas that the leader can truly see what the students, what their felt needs are. And that it's only then that a leader can understand what the student's next step to grow in Christ should be, what their next step in faith formation needs to be. If the leader's talking the whole time, he or she's never going to know where the student's at. They're just going to be sticking with the subject matter and not dealing with the person. Now, that's what I have to share as far as faith formation and learning styles. In the book you're going to read this week, Sacred Pathways by Gary Thomas, you're going to get a different take on this idea that I've shared from an educational perspective of what is termed learning styles. Gary's going to come from the same topic, having studied the lives of people in the Bible, of what formed them, and also looking at great Christian men and women of faith in history and today. What was it that formed them? And the surprising thing you're going to find out is that what I shared in the video about learning styles and what he shares from an more of an academic approach to Bible characters and people in history is that they're almost identical. So God's truth is God's truth. What I love about Gary's book is that he pulls in, he has 9 chapters where he does a sacred pathway, one sacred pathway for each of 9 chapters. At the end of each chapter, he identifies Bible people who were strong in that particular sacred pathway. He identifies people from history or contemporaries who were strong in that sacred pathway. And he also gives you like 12 or 15 self-quiz or self-assessment questions to ask where you rank yourself. And then and then you can add up your points. And then at the end of all 9 chapters, you'll be able to see objectively your top 2 or 3 sacred pathways. So this coming week, have fun with this. Instead of focusing on information, we're focusing on application. As a leader, how can I start using what I've heard or read this week on myself, on my own spiritual formation, and how can I start using what I've heard or what I'll read this week that I can be more fruitful as I talk with, lead, and teach others. Hey, have a great week as you deal with learning styles and sacred pathways and the implications of that for faith formation. Thank you.